Welcome everybody. We're going to be going over ways to speed up your scenes in Blender and make them just work better. There's going to be a handful of tips here. There's obviously going to be more workflows and more tips that everyone can contribute. Just drop them in the comments and share with the community. Now, beginning to work with Blender, or even as a novice or intermediate, you're going to want to start off by looking at how scenes are actually created. And to do that, it's very simple. You can just grab a simple scene like this off of the blender.org website. Just type in blender.org, you'll show up here, and you notice this is the scene or the new splash screen for Blender 4.3. You can go downloads, and then over here you can go to demo files. When you go to demo files, you'll have a number of different things you can choose from. The cube diorama is great for small scene lighting, checking things out. You've got the LE Pose library if you're into animation and rigging characters, and then you've got human-based meshes. And on down, you can scroll, and right here is where I downloaded the blend file for the new 4.3 House of Chores, and keeping a scene as low poly as possible and using different proven techniques and methods so that it can be properly animated and still be moving in the viewport is going to be crucial to your success and not getting frustrated to the point where you want to give up. Trust me, there's a huge community of people who have been doing this for years, and some people have just been doing it for days or hours. Don't give up, you'll get there. Get small scenes like this and see how they're put together. This is a ridiculous heavy scene we're going to be using shortly. It's got a subsurf modifier on each one with 5 levels applied. So it's a ton. It's 48 million faces and there's 96 of them. So it's going to be quite a big scene. But one of the things you also want to do is go into your preferences. Let's go to system. Make sure you've got your optics card selected for your GPU if you have one. If you don't, then you're just on CPU. Also be mindful that it's going to slow things down considerably. If you are working in cycles, make sure you've switched your device from CPU to GPU compute. This will allow you to do a lot more. Also, you can go down to performance and you could turn on persistent data. Persistent data will linger. A lot of memory will linger in the background, but for long render animations, this will help. And I'll discuss an add-on and cover this again towards the end. Now you can also drop down the Simplify tab here under Render. And once you've done that, this will give a max subdivision level. You can change a whole bunch of different things, volume resolution, and try to bring your scene down just a little bit more. Of course, in the render and in the viewport, you've got 2 different options there. And if you're just on CPU, you'll get more of this lag. You go over to GPU, it's going to process everything, and then you'll be able to move your scene just a little bit quicker and get some results. Now, obviously, when you're over in Eevee, there's one little thing I wanted to show you. Make sure I don't miss this. I'm going to turn this light energy up. And now that we've got that, don't forget you can turn on ray tracing, and that light is just going to go throughout the scene in a more natural way, and it's actually using a form of ray tracing to do that. That's going to get you way better results. There's 2 things you can do. You can be ready for the crash, or you can try to prevent it. Either way, it's going to happen, and one of those ways would be saving your work. Control S will save. Shift Control S will save as, and that's basically how you want to change the name. You can save a copy or you can save incrementally. This is the first and easiest method. Now you guys are going to have a bunch of other methods pop up in your head. Some of you guys are long-term industry professionals or professional hobbyists that have been doing this for years and years. Please drop in the comments your special ways of doing this if you want to contribute to the community. I will definitely not be able to cover all of those ways. Now, as you can see here, my scene is incredibly laggy. I'm in the overlays and I've got statistics turned on so you too can see all of this. Now, one thing for sure, when I go ahead and go in here and click Save As, I'll see I have a few iterations already because I was making sure that this does work in Blender 4.3. You never know. I was going to just type in maze demo 0. I'll come back out. And now that I've got this, I will save it, and then I want to change something in the scene. So as laggy as this is, I'm going to try to scale this up, and I'm going to hit Control Alt S. Now this is going to save maze demo 1, and now once I've done that, I can go back in. Let's check save as, and let's have a little look-see. And now I've got maze demo 1. So I don't want to save as again. I want to open that earlier iteration and see if that scale is gone, and that's going to tell me that this definitely is working as the way I intend it to. And of course, this is going to take a little while, and I'll actually show you guys another way to save your files after this, because if you save and try to open a file like this, you're asking for trouble. You'll have one of those start crashes, and those are super frustrating. All right, very good. That did open up the other file, and I know that's not easy to see. Let's see if I can move this up a touch so you guys can actually see the nomenclature there. So this is 0 blend. I think you guys can see that. So since this worked nicely, you know it's good. So you have incremental saves. Now, that took almost 3 minutes to reopen this file. That is not going to work for me. Now I'm even in solid mode or viewport shading. So let's grab one object and hit the /. And just so you guys can see necessarily some keys that I'm typing, because I haven't really been typing much yet, I'm going to go ahead and turn on my screencast keys. So now I'm going to hit the /, and this is going to isolate and then, of course, speed up the viewport. What it did is it kind of hid everything else and shifted it out of view, even though it didn't hide it. It just isolated this in a somewhat of a new viewport space. So now, pardon that motorcycle driving by if you guys heard that. So now, if I go ahead and just hit Control S, I'm saving that same iteration 0 again, because I don't really want to change this. So now if I was to go back in and go to open, and I want to open 0, this shouldn't take more than a few seconds, even with the heavy scene like it is. And then this will open up, and we won't have a open crash. Yeah, see, there you go. That's not too bad. And it's catching up. Took a second, but it was a lot quicker than 3 minutes. Then all you have to do is / to go back out into the main scene. And now that shift took probably about 35 seconds. I, of course, had to pause the video. So what do we do now? We've got this scene. We want to be able to go back and forth in sections and make this make sense. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and I'm just going to simplify it and make 2 distinct folders, or rather collections. And I'm going to make sure all these are selected. I press 7 to get the top view. Now I'm going to press M, and I'm going to go, hey, new collection. This would be Susie 1, and I'll just hit create. And now that that's in a folder, I can collapse that folder, and I can actually remove this from the view layer, or rather exclude it. And now look at the responsiveness of my scene. I can work on half of the scene now, and I've got this going on. Now if I go ahead and grab this top view again, I do believe that's just going to grab all of them. Okay, it did. And so I'm going to make a new collection again. I'll call this Susie 2. And now I'll click create, and I can collapse this one. And if I don't want that one in the view layer as well, then I can do that, because now maybe I want to throw a plane in here so that I can get a material on it and get some light diffusing, whatever you may need to do. So now if I want to bring back Susie 1 and work on Susie 1, I'll be able to do that a lot easier. And of course, then I'll be able to make some other adjustments to the scene and correct some things. And there we go. So these are a couple of very basic but good methods so you can work on the viewport. Don't forget, you can / to isolate that object and work on it. Now let's take a look at an add-on that is designed to do scene organization. This one is called Collection Compactor. It's by SKD, and you can go pick that up on Blender Market. I'll put a link in the comments. This is a pretty cool add-on. It's pretty powerful. So I've got a bunch of stuff in the scene now. So I just want to select something. I'll select lights because maybe I don't want these lights in the scene right now. And I would like to set them to be excluded from the viewport, excluding them from the outliner, the render, the whole thing. And I just click this button one time, and now lights will turn red up here. You'll see it's completely removed from everything. This could be very, very useful for you guys. So let's load up another one. I'll grab Susie 1, and I want to set that out of the viewport too. And now look at this. I can work with all of the other objects in the scene. And if I want to bring it back, I just click on the icon one time. It undoes everything. Very cool. So let's go ahead and bring back all of this stuff. And now to isolate things in the viewport, I'm just going to have this scene just as heavy as we can get it right now. This is going to take a second to pop back up. You can see that the screen is already trying to lock up here in Blender. Boom, there it goes, just barely. It's very important to be able to hide or show objects by type. I can go ahead and hide by type, and I may want to hide all of the mesh objects. And now the scene is incredibly responsive. I'll just click show all. It can bring it all back. Now, if I want to maybe only show by type, I can only show fonts or curves or whatever it is that I want. And I do have my curves over here. They're still showing, which is great. So I still have those. And then I can do show all. And I can show by type curve, speakers, lights, and just shift around in the scene. Very easy to use this add-on, and it's going to save you guys a ton of time. So moving on to the next thing, and let's say you have to show everything in your scene that you're doing. No big deal. There's an add-on for that too. I actually made this one. It's called OCP, or the one-click proxy. So what you can do is you can grab all objects that are selected. I'm just going to hide the plane. I don't want to proxy that. So from here, I can literally just hit A for all. Does not matter if you have other objects selected. It's only going to look at mesh anyways. Then I'm going to say, hey, any object that is over 1,000 faces and they are selected, I want to add the OCP. So I'll go ahead and click OCP. What's going to do is it's going to loop over everything in the scene and throw a proxy instance, thus reducing this face count of 48 million down to a much, much more manageable and smaller number. And we'll see the viewport is not responding because the add-on is busy doing the OCP. So give it whatever time it takes. It's going to be dependent on the speed of your computer and how many objects and how much geometry you have. Boom. As soon as I hit pause, it actually did that. So cool. I'm just going to / one of these. And now in the OCP, there's a turn on off button for the viewport visibility of the modifier. If you try to turn off the proxy and there's a huge amount of mesh behind it, it's just going to lag up. So the simpler option is a button, and I added that recently. So this is good. What I would want to do is probably not stay in the / to save this. What I would want to do is go in here and turn off the heaviest of the collections, and then I'll just do another save, and then I'll close out and reopen the file so it's not laggy. Now for a free option, because Blender definitely does have some powerful modifiers, you can go in and grab one of these heavily subdivided objects, and then you can come in here and we can go ahead and generate a modifier to handle this. And what we want to do is grab the decimate. Decimate modifier is going to reduce the individual face count on this by a large amount. Now, this is going to work very good, but will definitely be a slower option on heavy mesh. So I'll go to 0.5, and actually before we do too much here, let's check out how many faces this one object has. We have one selected, and it has 1 million faces. 1 million edges, and it has 503,000 faces. So if we go ahead and do the decimate on this, and let's bring it down to 0.75, we'll notice a reduction in the face count to 752,000. Now that may or may not be helpful, so you can bring that ratio down to 0.5. The recommended, so you still have your mesh sort of looking like it's supposed to is 0.25. That's what I personally recommend. So now that's cut in half, of course, at 0.5, and 0.25 will kind of help you be able to see. Still see your mesh, but we'll give it a second. We'll see how it looks. So that's not terrible. That's 240,000. So that's not bad. Now, how do you get that on all of these other objects? Well, there is a way to do that. Let's just select all of these. And I just want to make sure this speaker is not in here because we're not using the OCP add-on for this. And I don't want there to be any errors. So Control L is going to bring up your link transfer data menu, and I can now copy modifiers to all the selected objects. Make sure the one with the modifier is the active object. Now click copy modifiers. This will take a minute to go ahead and loop through all of these and add a decimate. But overall, instead of that top end face count of like 90 million, well, it's going to drop that down very, very significantly for us. And this will also speed up your scene. And like I said, this is a lot slower than the OCP add-on overall. And it's kind of inefficient because you can't control all of the properties on all of these at one time, nor can you turn them all off at one time. So that's why I always say add-ons save time. All right, now that took about 4 minutes on pausing the video, but now all of these have a decimate modifier on them, and they're all set to 0.25. Now, unfortunately, all of this is going to be in the render, so it's hard to manage a big scene without an add-on, but there is a free way to do it, so that can definitely be a little tedious and still tries to lag up at times. But this dropped it down, and that took 4 minutes, by the way, only with one of those collections. I didn't even do the Suzy 2 collection, which is still actually under a proxy, and I'll remove all the proxies off of here. And so that's nice, but the deal here is that in the OCP proxy add-on, I do also have a batch decimate set up, so this will loop through and clean all these up for you, and you can change them all at the same time for whatever is selected. They all have a 0.10 decimation, and this will make the scene more manageable. But don't forget, if you don't do this and try to save the space, memory, all that good stuff, and then hit save and save it this way, when you go to reopen this file, it's going to be a disaster. So let's go ahead and reopen it. Get a nice fresh Blender opened up right here. And we're going to click Maze Demo 3 because that's the last one we were just working on. And we'll see how long this takes to load in Blender 4.3.2. Shouldn't be too terrible. Look at that. See, that's nice. That's kind of the responsiveness I would want. If you try to do it without any of those decimates or any of that other stuff on there, is a disaster. Yeah, so I wouldn't even bother. Make sure you hide those collections or grab something like the collection compactor. Now, after bringing all of that back, I've got a scene that's more manageable. I've got all of the Suzannes out. We were around 48 million faces. We're down to 9 million faces. And you can still tell what the mesh object looks like. So hopefully this helps you guys out and gives you a little bit of a better workflow. Now, another big crash time is during renders, sometimes in the middle, sometimes before, after, who knows. So when you get in here and you are trying to render something out, there's actually an add-on that prevents this. This one is called Render Switch. It's very cool and very easy to use. The render switch, once installed, will work pretty much quietly in the background, and you don't have to really do anything except for just have it enabled. There will be a few options here, so you can select, hey, save before render. I want to do that. Also up here in the corner, you'll have a little checkbox. If your file is saved, it'll be green. If not, it'll be a red X. Here, you could switch to GPU or switch to cycles upon render start. So if I want to come in here and just so you can kind of get a better idea, let's do a quick split screen, and now I'll have the viewport, it's going to switch the viewport to a quick solid color at the moment of render. So it's going to dump that GPU memory a little bit and clean it up. So switching that to a solid color will actually save you crashes. So let's go ahead and click render image. The viewport switches to a solid color, and then it's going to go ahead and do the render. And when that is complete, not only is it saving your file, this is going to tell you that your file was saved. It'll print it on the screen and give you the location of the saved file. Now, while you're doing all this, you do build up a lot of memory in here rendering, and it's going to dump that every single time for you. So you can render with confidence, knowing not only is your file saved, but it's clearing up those stored up things in the memory that collect. Like if you're in cycles view in the viewport, you're just building up memory. While you're rendering, building up memory. And then you go back and try to render again, you're running out of GPU memory. That is also a huge hassle. This add-on will minimize all of that in a huge way. Now the render is finalizing here, so we're gonna wait 1 second. I think it's worth it just to see the entire process, so there's just no surprises for you. And while this is rendering, you can maybe go in and check a couple other things, like in these groups down here. You'll still be able to move things around and check what's going on in your scene. And boom, now it cleared up. And this switched it back to the basic viewport for us, which is good. And here we go. Now it says it saved this file, what it's named, and where it's saved. And this will save you a huge amount of headaches. And I didn't really have to have that other screen open, but I definitely wanted to show you what was going on so you can see the actual viewport change, because a lot of times it's so fast on faster PCs you won't even see it. I'll put a link in the comments for this one too. You guys could pick up this add-on. It's very inexpensive and it's on Blender Market. And one last thing, on cycles in the 3D viewport, under the render tab, you'll have sampling for both the viewport and then for the render. Let's just collapse that so it's not confusing, and I'll show you. It's set to 1024. That's a large amount. As you can see, that's trying to render out, and for a slower PC, you're not going to maybe realize what's going on. You could easily put this to 10 samples in the viewport, so when you move it, it's only got to go up to 10, and that'll give you just enough of a view in the viewport so that you can see. If you do have denoise on, this is going to take a little bit more memory, so be careful with that. You can, of course, switch your denoiser to whatever you have. Like I could switch mine to my optics, and that works pretty good. And then, of course, when you do go to render, make sure that your actual render samples are not set maybe to 4096. That may be not what you need. Maybe you only need 500 samples to get a good render. So there you go. There's a few tips. Thanks for sticking around, everybody. I appreciate you. You can say anything you like in the comments about the tips and tricks that you saw here, or the ones that you personally use and you think might actually be better. Let's go ahead and bless everybody in the community. Check the comments for all of the links I discussed about the different add-ons, like the proxy here, the render switch, and some different things that you can use to speed up your workflows and prevent crashes. Until next time, I'll see you guys. Happy blending.